Hi, fourth graders. I just am going to do a quick little video for you for today's math lesson. It's all review, so it's all things that you've already learned. So I'm going to skip some of the problems and kind of go around to, what really we should be practicing and focusing on and making sure that we remember our rules for simplifying and finding equivalent fractions and things like that. So first, I'm going to skip the vocab. The answer key is up on our Google Class site, so just make sure that you're checking your answers. But I want to go into number 4, where we have Leonard and Natasha's water bottle. So Leonard bought a large water bottle and Natasha bought a small water bottle. So if this is Leonard's water bottle and this is Natasha's water bottle, and they each drank half of their water, it wants to know if they drank the same amount. And we can say confidently that no, they didn't, because they have different sized water bottles, right? So half of Leonard's is going to be much more than half of Natasha's small water bottle. So the answer for that one would be no, because they have different size holes. That's the point, the idea. So for number 5, and we'll label that number 4. For number 5, when we're comparing two numbers, remember there's a rule. When we're comparing fractions and they have the same numerator, we need to look at the denominator. And the rule is when the numerators are the same, we look at the denominator. The smaller denominator represents the larger fractional part. So they both have 3 as their numerator. So their denominators, we're looking for the smaller number, and 4 is less than 5. So that fractional part is more than 3/5. 3/4 is greater than 3/5. And you need to make sure that you explain in words using the rule for that answer. For number 6, it is asking if 1/4 is equivalent to 3/8. So if we write our comparison statement, when we write those two fractions next to each other, we can easily see how to get a common denominator. I can get 2/8 with 4ths. So I'm going to multiply by 2/2. Remember, whatever I multiply to the numerator, I have to multiply to the denominator. So I have 2/8 compared to 3/8. Now, the question is, are these two fractions equivalent? And remember, equivalent means equal. So 2/8 and 3/8 are not equal. Okay, so just remember that when we do our conversion, that's how we can most easily compare fractions. Now, for 7, we're looking to simplify the fractions. So remember, when we simplify, we want to make it as small as possible. So when we have 9/12, we want to find a number that we can divide both the numerator and the denominator by. And 9 and 12 are both divisible by 3. So we're going to divide by 3/3. And 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 12 divided by 3 is 4. And then our test is, can we divide one number by 3 and 4 to get a smaller fraction? And our answer is no, right? There's no other number other than 1 that we can divide 3 and 4 by to get a smaller fraction. So this is simplest form. That's your answer. Number 8, if we're looking at simplifying fractions again, we have 80/100. Okay, and again, we want to divide by one number, both the numerator and the denominator, by the same number to get a smaller fraction. So we're going to start, I would say let's start with 10, because we know that 10 can go into 80 and 100 evenly. So we're going to divide by 10 tenths. 80 divided by 10 is 8. And 100 divided by 10 is 10. But I know that both of those numbers are even numbers, so they can both be divided by 2. So it is not in simplest form because I can go even smaller. I'm going to divide 8 and 10 by 2. Divide by 2 halves. 8 divided by 2 equals 4, and 10 divided by 2 equals 5. So we have 4/5. Now this is simplest form, so I don't have to divide any further. That's our answer. All right. For number 9, we're looking at a number 9, we're looking at creating equivalent fractions to 1/5. And this is on our quick quiz. So what I would recommend, and they give us lines like this, I would recommend, maybe right below. We're multiplying by 2, by 3, by 4. So we're going to say 1/5 times 2, remember 2 halves, right? So that's 2/10. And then we're going to multiply by 3/3. So that's 3/15, and so on until you get 5. Now you could get creative and multiply by maybe 10/10 instead. So that would be 10/50. Okay, as long as you multiply both the numerator and the denominator by the same number, and you're good, and that your multiplication is correct. Okay. Number 10 is going to be a little hard to show on our screen here, but I'm going to explain how we do it. And we've done this before. So between 0 and 1, and I'll just do part of our number line here. Between 0 and 1, we're working with sixths, okay? And you're going to pretend that those are perfectly even. So if we look at letter C, that represents the fraction 1/2, okay? So we need to find where on our number line 1/2 goes. And since it's less than 1, it's going to be between 0 and 1. So 1/2, if I wanted to write it as a sixth, to get from 2 to 6, I multiply by 3. And again, just like always, we multiply the numerator and the denominator by the same number. So 1 times 3 is 3. Now I have 3/6, okay? So I go up here and I count from 0, 1, 2, 3. I put a dot and I put C. And that's how I'm doing that, okay? So for each of them, letter C is the only one that's less than 1, so that's the only one that will be in here. But you want to find the spot where each of those fractions go. So we'll do one more together, and then you can check your work with our answer key. There's only one fraction that is between 1 and 2. That's more than 1, but less than 2. And that's letter A. So now we need to figure out where letter A goes. So A is 1 2/3. Okay. So it's going to be somewhere in here. Again, it's more than 1, but less than 2. And if I wanted to change thirds into sixths, I need to multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 2, and I get 4/6, and my whole number stays the same, so it's still 1. So letter A goes on 1 and 4/6. So 1, right? And 1, 2, 3, 4/6. And that's letter A. Okay? So I think that you can do the rest on your own, but if you need help, make sure that you send me an email to ask. All right, numbers 11 through 14, we're just changing the format of what they give us and putting it into decimal form. So 74 hundredths is less than 1. So we put a 0 point, and there's 74 hundredths. Okay, so it's 0.74. Okay, 12 8, I'll put this one out, 8 3/10. And when we write that as a decimal, we start with our whole number, 8, and we put our decimal because the fraction is the decimal part of that number, and we have 3/10, and we can write it like this or like 8.30. Either way is just fine. For 13, we have 12 4/100. So we write our whole number again first, always. We put our decimal point, and we put a 0 placeholder for the 10ths place and a 4 in the 100ths place. This tells us $12.04 or 4 cents. And finally, 14. We have 21 3/500. So we start with our 21. The decimal point represents the and then we have 3/500. So it's 3, 5. Again, if you have any questions, make sure that you ask. See you soon.